Better to have a short life that is full of what you like doing than a long life spent in a miserable way.
Welcome to Footwork.
Today we are joined by the absolute legend himself, Matt Lawrence. Matt's innate drive and mental strength saw him take an unusual path on the way to becoming a professional who clocked over 500 games for Fulham, Millwall, Crystal Palace, and more. He captained Millwall in the FA Cup final against Manchester United. He celebrated promotions, relegation scares, but also endured relegation and the feeling of being underappreciated at a club. All that, so much more. Let's get started.
All right, so today we got a special treat. Matt Lawrence, welcome to Footwork. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, no worries at all. It's a pleasure to be on with you guys, and it's nice. It's 4:00 in the afternoon my time, so it's a good time to chat. Thanks for dragging me away from the Liverpool game. I appreciate that.
I mean, when we set this up, I kind of forgot that this was Champions League night.
I just want you to know how much I've given up to talk to you guys as I'm missing the first half. But hopefully, from your point of view, Atletico Madrid will be 3-0 up at half time. I can watch the second half.
Liverpool I was going to say, are we rooting for Madrid in this one then?
Well, I'm a Liverpool fan, so I'm rooting for Madrid from your point of view for the first half, as long as I can watch the comeback in the second half.
Right.
Okay, cool.
Make it entertaining.
I want to start right there. Then I didn't know you were a Liverpool fan, so I'll ask you one question. I'll ask you a simple question about Liverpool: is Salah the best player in the world right now?
Is he, in terms of form? He's very close. I'm gonna sit on the fence. He's very close, but Haaland's there, Lewandowski's there, so it's hard to judge. And I mean this: it's hard to judge players from league to league, from Champions League to Bundesliga to Premier League. But certainly, even with my objective hat on, as you said, as a Liverpool fan, Salah's up there. He has to be. He's in the top three, probably right now, playing the best football of his career. Well, definitely the best football of his career, and possibly the best footballer of any player anywhere in the world right now. So yeah, look, if you have to ask me, yes, he is, but that's in the last month, you know. Who knows what's going to happen in the next month, or even what happens as we're talking now. He may get injured, he could get sent off, he could miss 3 of the worst misses ever. So yeah, it's all relatively subjective, but he's phenomenal right now. And I think whether you're a Liverpool fan or not, you'd very much enjoy watching him. Certainly when Messi and Ronaldo, even though Ronaldo last night scored a couple, those guys are definitely coming to the twilight of their career, and it's good to see other players coming up. Messi and Ronaldo have dictated to the world and the football world for the last 10 to 15 years. Got all the Ballon d'Ors. So yeah, I'm happy for someone else to be there, especially as he's a Liverpool player.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not as happy being a United fan. I don't know if I should divulge this information to you this early in the podcast. But no,
I can always mute you or just switch it off. So it's
fine. No, I mean, as objectively speaking, I agree. I mean, it always comes down to form, and it's tough with just the way. I mean, the defensive work he does too. It's just tough to kind of name too many players above him. I know you said Haaland, Lewandowski. I would agree with those two. Did you have a player? I mean, when you were growing up in England, youth system. Did you have a famous player or favorite player that you looked up to, that your family looked up to, or anything like this?
Certainly my earliest memories, and I don't really see how they can be, but in my mind, this is my earliest memory. Kenny Dalglish signed from Celtic to Liverpool for £440,000, which doesn't sound much now, but was a lot in 1977. To replace, he came as the number 7, replacing Kevin Keegan, who left Liverpool to go to Hamburg. That's my earliest memory of football, but I would have been 3 years old then. So I'm not sure. I don't think I can remember that. I think I'm projecting that I remember that, but that's sort of my first love of a football player and of football, and partially why I'm a Liverpool fan, because of him. as I say, I seem to remember Kenny Dalglish playing in green and white for Celtic, but again, I don't think I can because I was too young. But certainly growing up from my earliest memories to into my teens, Kenny Dalglish as a legend of Liverpool and Scotland and Celtic, and then also obviously as a manager of Liverpool as well. So that was my first love of football, first love of a player, and like that's never gone away. Even when he's sitting in the stands with Ian Rush at Liverpool now, watching the current team, I'm always interested to say what he's mouthing. If anybody can so lip read what he said when United went 5-0 down.
I saw him laughing up there in the stands. Yeah,
he's a passionate fan. So that's my earliest memory, and he's still my love of the game is partially because of him.
Mm-hmm. So can you walk us through, young and the image of young 3-year-old Matt talking about the transfer of new Kenny Dalglish to Liverpool is pretty hilarious. Were you into football as soon as you could walk?
Yeah, certainly. And again, I have no memory of this because I was walking, I'm sure, at 12 months. But my mum always took me out into, like, we had a garage where we used to park the car. And I apparently almost made my mum take the car out of the garage, and I'd be running around in the garage because it was cold when I was 18 months. That would have been December 1975. And the only way I could be kept quiet, my mum told me, and my father told me, was by kicking a ball around. So that's my mum and dad's earliest recollection of me playing football, but my love for the game began just with, a round sphere. It wasn't football per se, but it was something that kept me happy. I'm sure if I was growing up in America, it may have been around baseball in 1975. It may have been, an American football. But my mum said that I would constantly chase the ball around. And, lots of people who have watched me during my career will say I spent my whole career just chasing the ball around and not really touching it. So
not much has changed.
Nothing's changed. No, but that's it. Seriously, 18 months of age, pretty much from the minute, or maybe a bit earlier, from the minute I could walk. That's what kept me quiet.
And I think one of the things that just from reading up on you and getting some information, the path that you took was just one that really kind of stuck to us. So you grew up where exactly in England?
I grew up in Northamptonshire, which is certainly not a hotbed of football or soccer. I grew up in Northamptonshire, is obviously a county for us, but a state for you. So say I grew up in the equivalent of Northamptonshire, I don't know, Delaware or somewhere like that.
A small, very small one, yeah.
And not a hotbed of the game. Our local team was Northampton Town. They were called the Cobblers because Northamptonshire is a shoe industry. So growing up, a shoe industry manufacturing a county it was at the time. Obviously not anymore. That's long been transposed to China or wherever it may be. But loads of my friends' parents grew up being, working in shoe factories and stuff like that. But it was not a soccer town by any means, but I was just naturally, I guess, gifted at it. And as I mentioned, I've just always enjoyed running around after the ball. So it went from enjoying running around after the ball to progressing it from, through 6, 7, 8. I used to go and watch my dad play. My dad, my dad will tell you that he was the best goalkeeper in the world, but my dad played crappy Rushden Sunday League football, which is the Wagon and Horses play the Dog and Duck, and it would be the reserve sides of the Wagon and Horses and the Dog and Duck. So at 4 years of age, I would go and cling onto the goalpost and stand next to my dad and watch a very bad level of football. But it certainly grew or piqued my interest in the game even more. And however bad the standard is, you understand that there's 11 people against 11 people. And you understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to pass the ball in between the opposition and score the ball. And I know it's in its simplest form, but as a 4-year-old, that's what you take it as. You're not looking at tactics or formation. And I picked it up very quickly. I guess that's, what you were supposed to do. And my love of it grew from there. I went and watched my dad every Sunday from the age of 4 to the age of 14. And then I started playing in that team to give me more experience playing, obviously, against adults, grown-ups. And as a 14-year-old who hadn't hit puberty, I was incredibly small compared to a 6-foot guy who drank 20 pints on Friday and Saturday night, smoked 20 Marlboro, and then came out and played football. So it wasn't the greatest standard, but it certainly helped me in terms of physicality, and again, learning how to deal with the physicality without being able to match it. So you have to come up with something different, whether that's speed, whether that's a trick, whatever it may be. You come up with different ways of playing through that. And of course, while I did that on a Sunday, on a Saturday, I would play a couple of years up for my local, like club team as well. So all the time I was playing against people who were either 2 years older than me or people who were 10, 20 years older than me. And for me, it might not be the right route for some people, but for me, it was the right route. And it certainly worked out, okay for me, but that's just my kind of upbringing.
Right.
First off, I would like to say, I guess it's all relative, because I would like to see some of the best players in the world drink 20 pints before, smoke 20 Marlboros, and then go play out. So
that's at half time as well. There's at least one pint being drunk at half time and a couple of cigarettes being smoked. But again, look, that is also 14 years ago. That's 19. When I was 14, it's 1988. So of course, diets, even Sunday league players probably don't do that anymore. But again, it's a long time ago, and nutrition almost wasn't a thing. I know it was, but you know what I mean? It wasn't exactly as though we were eating pasta and chicken and rice and things like that the day before a game.
So, as we're entering those later teenage years, did you know that you weren't going to get into the professional academies or things like this? Did you have an idea that college was American college was the route that you wanted to take? And then how did that all come about?
Certainly up until the age of about 14, possibly 15, I was very, very good. And there was within my age range, there was an opportunity to possibly go on to academies. But although I was being a little bit flippant earlier, talking about, hitting puberty, again, in the mid-late 80s, and football in England was very much about physicality and size and height and speed. And everybody passed me by at 14, 15, 16 as they grew and I didn't grow. So it became very apparent that I wasn't going to be in an academy team. Even back then, it wasn't even academies. It was just youth teams, and it was called YTS, the youth training scheme for 16 to 18-year-old kids. Whatever it was, I wasn't in the right place at the right time. I mentioned Northampton Town was my local team. I grew up 10, possibly 15 miles away from Northampton. I never once had a trial with Northampton Town, even when I was very good within my county, even when my club team was playing Northampton Town and we were beating Northampton Town youth team, I never once went for a trial there. So because I guess they were like tier 3 or 4. So back then it was Division 1, Division 2, Division 3, Division 4 were the 4 top tiers in professional football. I just didn't get a look in. So it did become very obvious for the sort of early mid-teens that it wasn't going to happen. Latter teens, so I'm not sure if you know or the listeners know, at 16 we graduate from high school, and then we have a sort of a 2-year period where we go to a college before we go to university. So between 16 and 18, loads of people have left school, but I carried on my education, and we do what's called A-levels, which follow on from our high school graduation. So during that period, there's an England team that's called the England schoolboy team. So there's an England professional team for under 18s where, the kids play for Man United and Liverpool and that. And there's also one where you still need to be in full-time education to play for the team. So I was very lucky, and I worked my way through the trials, and I got into the England schoolboy under 18 side. And during those trials, scouts would come over from the States, and just one of these trials. It was the last 30 of the trials, so there's 30 players left in the whole of England, schoolboy wise, to whittle it down to 18. And so just at these last 30 trials, Glenn Meyerneck, who's obviously a legend in the US, sadly passed away since, but managed the US under-23 team, managed at the professional level, Houston Dynamo, I think Colorado Rapids. He was the assistant manager or assistant coach for Hartwick College. And just on a walk back to the dorms that we were having, he literally offered me a full scholarship on the spot on this walk. I'd never met him before. I didn't know really a great deal about American colleges per se. I knew it was an option, but I hadn't thought too long and hard about it. But the minute he offered me a full scholarship, that was it. That was what I was doing. I did next to no background on Hartwick. Wow. Computers weren't quite such a thing back then either. Mm-hmm. I wasn't on the internet. I wasn't Googling. I had one phone call with a guy from Nottingham called Simon Baker, who was at Hartwick. He was a senior. He was a junior, I think, at the time. And he phoned me up, and it was January. He's in upstate New York. I'm asking what the weather's like. And he's like, looking out the window, he's like, oh, yeah, it's sunny. It's beautiful. And I was like, okay, cool. Upstate New York in January, there's 5 feet of snow out there. I didn't know that. I just took him at his word and kind of, off I went to America, and that was that. I was very lucky in the terms that I ended up at a wonderful institution of soccer that Hartwick is, and with wonderful coaches, because I could have ended up in, we excuse the language, still Missouri, Alabama, Wyoming,
right,
where football isn't exactly the main sport. I could have been at a school where everything was Division 1 and soccer was like the last. I was lucky. I went to Hartwick. Yeah. It was only us, men's soccer and women's water polo because of Title IX. Obviously, that's the two Division 1 sports, and everybody else was Division 3. So I don't want to say we were revered, but certainly we were very much looked up to. Hartwick, I think, is still the smallest school ever to have won the national championship. They won it back in 1977. Been to many Final Fours, Final Eights. So it's a real, it was, unfortunately it's not now, but it really is, or was a real institution and hotbed of soccer. Oneonta was also almost soccer town, USA. National Hall of Fame, Soccer Hall of Fame was there for a while before it moved to Dallas. It was just, fate, and kind of my career path, went in a fantastic, uphill trajectory. So I was very, very fortunate, I guess.
Right. And how would you compare just, I guess, the lifestyle of, maybe college is a little bit different than what America is, but the lifestyle and then the soccer and the day-to-day from what you were experiencing in England prior?
I was very, very fortunate working with Jim Lennox, the head coach at Hartwick, Glenn Meyerneck. In that interim period between offering me the scholarship, he left, but Carl Rees, who's now the head coach of Fairfield University, he took over as the assistant manager. He's a guy from Liverpool, somebody I'm still very close to this day, and he went to Hartwick. He was at Liverpool and Everton as a kid, and a very good player in his own right. So I was just fortunate that I was learning from two of the very best coaches in the country at the time, if not still now. And it felt like a professional club, but I was going to school. So my classes were in the morning. We made sure that all our classes were between 8 and 12. I would either go to the gym or we would train. We'd train every day from whether it be 2 to 4 or 4 to 6. And it just had the feeling of a professional club. And from somebody who had never spent time at a professional club, I had nothing to compare it to anyway. So my analysis of it was, this is what professional football is, because I'm playing it every day. I'm playing it at a very high standard, and I'm being coached by some of the very best people. I know that they're the very best now, looking back at it, because I've been coached by 5 or 6 national team managers, and Jim Lennox is still the best coach I've ever worked with. You know, I worked with Mark McGee, who was the Scotland national team coach. Laurie Sanchez was the Northern Ireland head coach. Kevin Keegan was the England head coach. Peter Taylor was the England head coach. And Jim Lennox is, without a shadow of a doubt, the person who has taught me the most about the game. Granted, that may be because that's that sponge-like period between 18 and 21. I took everything on board, and I needed to be taught more because I'd never been within the professional game. But between Jim Lennox and Carl Rees, I learned so very, very much. And come, I guess, like junior, senior year, Jim and Carl had told me that I could go home, you know, and make my way in the professional game. And I had full belief in them. And obviously, you know, without being arrogant, you have to be, any professional athlete has to have a modicum of arrogance. I was more than believing that I was good enough to go back. If it had just been 2 people saying it and I didn't believe it, I'd have failed. The 2 people were telling me, and I had the inner belief that I would go back and play professional football. And, you know, again, right place, the right time and all of that. But yeah, you know, a certain amount of talent too. And the path followed on from American college to professional ranks back in England.
Right. And before we jump to the professional ranks and you going on trial at Wycombe, how was the adjustment period when you first got to Hartwick? Was there a huge difference in level from where you were playing?
I was lucky. Level, certainly not. It was much better than where I was playing. Transition-wise, in terms of I'm going from England, living with my mum and dad, and, you know, having my metaphorical bottom wiped for me every day by my parents, and going and living, you know, abroad. Obviously granted the same language, although at times it doesn't feel like it. I couldn't understand people, they couldn't understand me. But I went with a guy called Ian McIntyre, who was actually the captain of the England schoolboy side that I said about. So we were roommates with the England schoolboy side. We went to Hartwick together. We roomed for 4 years there. There was a number of other English players at Hartwick. Carl Rees, as I said, the assistant coach, was an English guy. The transition was hard in terms of being away from my family, but the transition into the pure soccer element of it was simplistic. And not only did I have great coaches, I had great people around me, great teammates. I don't want to make out that it was too easy and take it too lightly. You know, I moved 3,500 miles away from home for the first time ever in my life. And there was no computers. We weren't FaceTiming. I wasn't FaceTiming my parents. I wasn't, you know, we were, you know, out of communication apart from letter, basically. So it was hard from that point of view. But again, I was lucky. I'll say the word again. It's a bit of luck that I fell into a wonderful place in Oneonta, a wonderful college in Hartwick, had wonderful teammates around me, and the community of Hartwick bought into the soccer team as well. Like, Ian and I went to different people's houses every Thanksgiving. You know, some weekends teammates would take us home to Jersey or Pennsylvania or wherever. It was like there was no way I could fail if I went about it the right way. If I went to class every day and made sure I was passing, so I qualified as an NCAA athlete, obviously. And as long as my footballing ability was up to speed and I carried on with that, and I wasn't embracing the party lifestyle of college and university too much, it would have been very, very difficult to fail at Hartwick College.
So it's nice to hear, because it seems like, I mean, growing up in your hometown, as you kind of phrased, that you never quite had the right place, the right time, the right chance. And it seems like this great experience at Hartwick kind of was that right place, right time. And it seemed like it did a lot maybe for your mentality, your ability. And then seems like it kind of set you or reset your mind in terms of ambitions and possibilities in the professional game. So how did you take that onto the trials and then ultimately signing with the Wanderers?
luckily, as you know, I had two very good people telling me I was good enough. I believed I was good enough. So I graduated early from college. I mentioned a little while ago that the 2-year transition period we have between high school and going to university. I got credits for those at Hartwick, so I was already on a career path, not career path, but a university or college path to be able to graduate early. So I graduated after 3.5 years. So Christmas 95, I graduated, and I gave myself from Christmas 95 to go home to June 96, which is obviously, you know, 6 months of the English soccer season or the European soccer season, to make it as a pro. If that didn't happen, I was coming back to the States to do my master's and go about life, you know, in a different manner and more down the education path. So Ian and I, my roommate from Hartwick, we would go back every Christmas and play for a non-league team called Grays Athletic, who are probably in maybe like the 6th or the 7th tier of the, you know, the English pyramid system. So 3, maybe, you know, about 3 or 4 outside of the professional ranks. So we would play there during the Christmas period every year. I went back there, played for Grays for maybe 5-6 games in Christmas period and January, Christmas period 95, January period 96. And within 6 games, I'd scored 4 or 5 goals. And I had Wycombe, Ipswich, Sheffield Wednesday, and a couple of other teams offering me trials. And Wycombe were the team that I went to first, and I did very well. I was there for 2 weeks. I knew within having been there for approximately 20 minutes that I was good enough to play for that team, and I felt comfortable there. And I spent 2 weeks there. I played a reserve game. I scored and set a goal up in the reserves, and they offered me a contract. You know, I think I signed it February the 10th or February the 15th, 1996. So from graduating December the 21st, 1995, I had signed professionally within you know less than 8 weeks. So again, yes, skill level and ability, but also a little bit of luck as well, that everything just sort of fell into place neatly.
Right. And do you feel that how was the level at Wycombe compared to Hartwick? That you just left. I mean, December 95, you would have played that season, right? And then you went right home.
Exactly. So even the reserves, Wycombe reserves, I think Wycombe were in the 3rd or possibly even the 4th tier of the professional system back in England. Even their reserve team was just so much quicker, so much more physical. So it took a really big adjustment, and I'd be lying if I didn't say that at times the game would pass me by, because I said to you that during training I knew I was good enough, but it's training to match day situations and the professionalism and that real hunger and desire, and almost players within your own team trying to cut your own throat to play in the starting lineup, and obviously metaphorically cut your own throat, not literally, although it came to blows at times. But you know, it took a massive transition. Again, very fortunate that I had that 6-month period to sort of bed in. I played in fits and starts for the first team, but I trained with the first team during that last 5 months of the season, you know, January 96 to May 96 when the season finished. Trained every day, learned how to become a professional footballer, got taught by professional footballers around me what it means to be a professional, and just learned on the job, which meant that when I went back to Wycombe for pre-season of July 96, I was fully up to speed physically and mentally. It was a real difficult adjustment, and that's Wycombe, and without being disparaging to Wycombe, we're not talking about Liverpool here, we're not talking about Man United, but the standard was so very good, and again, I was surrounded by a bunch of, you know, very good people as well, and as I think they are at most football teams. But I had a lot of fun doing it. But it was the learning on the job was very difficult. I didn't even drive when I was there. I remember being driven to training by teammates, and on the way back from training, I'd fall asleep in the back of the car every single day for the first 6 months because I was so shattered. The intensity of training, physically and mentally, just took such an adjustment. And as I say, that's coming from Hartwick College, which was a very professional college team in the American collegiate system, you know. But I just wasn't. I thought I was ready, but I wasn't ready. But, you know, at the end of that 6 month period, I was, you know, I was finally ready. But it took a massive amount of adjustment on my part, and I think my teammates as well, getting used to this, you know, spotty student kid from America coming over. And it took me, you know, I was a bit wet behind the ears. I was incredibly naive, you know, and I had to learn quickly, I guess.
So what were some of the things, I mean, leading up to your move to Fulham, what were some of the things that you noticed that were changing in your game to help you as a more solidified professional?
Getting used to training every day, and having to be very good in training every day. There's no switching off. You know, when I was at Hartwick, if you had a bit of a knock, you could maybe take it easy through training. At Wycombe, any professional team, you can't, especially not when you're trying to make it. If you're a hardened, seasoned veteran, when I was 35, I could take it easy in training, so I'd already proved who I was, so to speak. But at 21, 22, you had to be on the money every single day. Firstly, to get into the team, let alone to then be in the team and stay in the team. I always say it, and I will still stand by. Anybody can, not anybody, but a lot of people can fluke making 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 professional appearances. You can't fluke making 100, 200, 300 appearances. You have to have that mentality that you're going to do it every day, and then every week, and then every month, and then every season, and then every calendar year as well. It's tough. So what was I learning? I was just getting experience. My game was developing. I was getting stronger physically. I was getting more confident in my own ability. I was learning to communicate. I was very quiet as a player early on because I was firstly a little bit shy. Secondly, a little bit wary of all these people around me who had been in the game for 10 or 15 years. And I was still very aware that I'd come back from college and maybe I didn't quite believe I should be there. But it was just an ease within myself helped massively. But just, I knew I hadn't hit my ceiling. I knew I was getting better and better every day. And I didn't feel like I was a professional footballer, really and truly, probably until 3 years into my career. Maybe that's down to my own little bit of lack of self-belief or lack of, the communication skills was another huge part of it. Being able to talk teammates through the game and listening. There's so many different facets of why I felt more comfortable. And, you know, eventually, as you said, I went to Fulham purely because I wasn't playing at Wycombe. You learn as a professional footballer that different managers have different opinions. One manager will think that you're the best thing since sliced bread. Another manager will think you're useless. And at Wycombe, John Gregory came in, went on to manage Aston Villa and Derby, and just took I don't want to say a real dislike, but he certainly didn't like me as a person, didn't like me as a footballer. And it took me a long time to work my way out of Wycombe. I spent a long time playing in the reserves at Wycombe after playing in the first team to be able to make that move to Fulham. He wouldn't let me go out on loan. He didn't care that I was metaphorically rotting in the reserves. He would only let me go if a team would come in and pay money for me. It wasn't a great deal of money. It would have been, tens, 20s, 30s of thousands of pounds, whatever. But eventually I was lucky that a team, and it was Fulham, paid money for me. And, the career took another path then, as it does in any sport. You get to learn that people's opinions can have a massive effect on your career path and where you're going. And if somebody dislikes you, they can kill your career off very, very quickly.
Welcome to Footwork.
So Matt, you made the jump to Fulham after they were willing to pay the transfer fee for you, and then there was a new project from new owners that they wanted to get promoted to Division 1. Did you feel any new added pressure with this, kind of in the background?
Added pressure? I don't think so. The change, as you say, was instantaneous and huge. It went from being a club where we would struggle, we'd almost be taking sandwiches on the road on the coach, to not quite flying private jet, but it was very noticeable that we went from being paupers to owned by this rich guy, obviously Mohammed Al Fayed, who owned Harrods, who was a multi-millionaire, who had a real desire to make Fulham be successful, and look, he achieved. Initially, the manager who brought me from Wycombe to Fulham remained in charge, Mickey Adams. But it became very apparent that Mohammed Al Fayed had bigger ideas, and I don't mean bigger ideas. Mickey Adams is a wonderful manager, and Mickey Adams should have stayed in charge, but he had bigger ideas in terms of Mohammed Al Fayed had probably never heard of Mickey Adams. Mohammed Al Fayed wanted somebody he had heard of to be the manager of this project of his football club. So straight away he brings in, or very quickly, he brings in two England legends. And I mentioned to you the continuity of Kenny Dalglish replaced Kevin Keegan at Liverpool. That's what I grew up with. Kevin Keegan suddenly comes in as the director of Fulham, where I am a footballer, which is astounding. This guy who's, was playing for Liverpool up till 77, then was the European Footballer of the Year in 78 and 79, I think. And he was director of football. He brought in Ray Wilkins, who obviously, sadly has passed away, but had played at Man United, was captain of Chelsea at 17, played for AC Milan, played for Rangers, played with Maldini and Baresi at AC Milan. And so all of a sudden we went from this pauper-like football club to this shiny new project that Mohammed Al Fayed wanted to make work. So we went from having players earning a few £100s a week to suddenly Chris Coleman was bought from Blackburn, earning £15,000, £20,000 a week, which again in 1998 was it's still a hell of a lot of money now, but we're talking that was £100,000, if not £150,000 of today's money. So to answer Sean's question, I didn't feel the pressure. It just became this fascinating thing to be a part of for quite a while. Look, I didn't stay on board for as long as I would have wanted. Again, I felt that I was not quite mistreated, but wasn't treated as well as I should have been at Fulham. And, I left Fulham before the project had carried on and reached its, destination, so to speak. But I had a great time at Fulham. I met some wonderful people. I played with some fantastic footballers, Peter Beardsley, obviously ex-Liverpool and Everton and Newcastle. He came in and played. Paul Bracewell, Everton player. Paul Pesky-Solidou, Canadian international. I could go on and on. Mike Taylor played for Birmingham. I got to play in training with Kevin Keegan and Ray Wilkins. It was fascinating. It was wonderful. I did very, very well for Fulham. I think the season we got promoted or just missed out on promotion, I played 55 of 56 games. I think I only missed one from suspension. And I was up due for a new contract. And with all the money that had come into the club, I knew that players had come in to replace me, were earning 20 times as much money as me. And I was still playing in the team and they were in the reserves. I felt I should get offered a decent, contract, and I wasn't. The contract I got offered basically said, piss off. off you go. We don't want you anymore, even though I've played all those games. So, I don't want to say I'm that guy who doesn't want to be disrespected, but I couldn't possibly stay at the club playing on money that I thought was respectful to me and to what I had achieved the season before. So, yeah, our paths veered in different directions, and my ties were cut. And it's a massive shame. That's one regret I have, not being offered a good contract, because Fulham was and still is such a wonderful football club. I've been back there since, watching games. I've been back there playing at Craven Cottage for the teams. I've been back there since I've been, and way better now that obviously Khan's in charge, and obviously there's now a swimming pool on the roof of the stadium. It's turned into a community stadium. Just a massive regret that things didn't work out there. As I say, I've been back since I've retired and played in testimonial games and played in charity games there. 2 or 3 of very close friends, Fulham fans and things like that. So yeah, just a shame, but it was out of my hands. It's a regret that it didn't work out, but it was something that was out of my control.
Yeah, well, we try and tell players that you kind of have to know your self-worth in the end. So, I think it's a tough thing for a player to go on playing for a club or owners that aren't respecting the amount of work and the amount of games, 55 out of 56 games that you played. I think. Do you feel like there was anything you could have done, or you felt that one was out of your hands, as you say?
No, I genuinely felt it was out of my hands. I genuinely felt I wasn't a big enough name. I genuinely felt that 1 or 2 right backs had been bought in. A right back had been bought in for £1 million as in transfer fee, and then was being paid thousands of pounds a week and was not playing, and I was playing. So, you can't do much more than play every game of the season, barring one. And as you say, look, I never needed to earn the money that, say, Chris Coleman was earning. But as you say, you have to have some self-worth. And very early on in my career, the other professional players I played, just always be happy with the contract you're signing. Don't worry about other people. The centre forward's always going to earn more money than the right back. That's a fact of life. Unless you're Cafu, that's just going to happen. But be happy that you're earning what you need to have. Don't sign your contract and then in 6 months' time be knocking on the door saying, I'm not happy with this contract.
Yeah.
Be happy with what you want. The contract I got offered was no good. So I went in and said, we need to negotiate. And I was told this is a take it or leave it deal, which is even more reason to believe that is, please leave.
Right.
And then, after that, making that move back to Wycombe, a little homecoming, how did you feel in terms of a step in your career? Did you feel that was a sidestep coming back from Fulham? Did you feel like it was just a fresh opportunity? What was the mentality going back?
That's a good way of putting it. It's a fresh opportunity, 100%. In terms of, also you have to look at it, what you said initially as well. It was a sideways step for me without a shadow of a doubt. You have to remember that Wycombe were bottom of the league when I signed for them. I think it was about, my memory's not great, I think it was about Christmas time I signed for them, and they had 3 points. Points. So everybody thought they were going to be relegated. The only reason I went there was because I thought they would survive. I thought they had enough in the dressing room for us to survive. So, yeah, sideways, possibly a downward step, financially better step, which helped. It was a longer-term contract as well. And I did know that if I did well there, that, other opportunities, other clubs would come knocking. I wasn't worried that it was that sideways, possibly backward step. I again had a belief in the people at Wycombe and belief in myself that that wasn't like the end of the road. It was the move I had to take to play football, to earn more money. And it was great that I was going back to Wycombe. And I felt I was going back to Wycombe as almost as a fully rounded professional footballer. I felt that what they've seen before, I was still learning on the job. I felt that having worked with the quality of players and coaching staff at Fulham, that I was now, nobody's ever fully rounded, because we always want to improve. Even when you're 35, you want to improve. But I felt I was truly a professional footballer going back there.
Mm-hmm. And so what did those 2 years do for your development? I mean, you came in with that mentality, and it seems like you kind of had that epiphany, all right, I made it and I'm comfortable. Do you feel like those 2 years really set you up for the, the rest of the success that you garnered in your career?
Yeah. The time and what I learned at my initial stint at Wycombe and my couple of seasons at Fulham 100% set me up for the rest of my career. What did I learn? Again, so many things. I would be sat here for 3 hours if I said, but growing physically in terms of, I knew my body shape had peaked, had stopped growing. I was getting to learn how to use the gym. I was getting to learn how to recover. I was getting to learn how to eat right, how to train during the off season. Because, the cliche is that you're a professional athlete 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you really are. Even when you're in the pub, the time that you're in the pub watching the football with your mates, you're still a professional athlete. You still have to be careful of what's going on. It's a multifaceted growth of an individual, of me as an individual and as an athlete, and learning to take on board what the coaches are saying, working out which bits to maybe wheedle out and not listen to, working out which bits to truly take on board, working out which bits of advice teammates are giving you and which bits to disregard, and really learning to watch football and analyze it, be more analytical of the games I'm watching, whether it be Liverpool playing Atletico Madrid, whether it be Man United playing Bayern Munich, them watching games at my own level as well, and just taking many, many different pieces of everything, coaches, players, my own learning process, and just grow it, experience of playing. But by the time I returned to Wycombe, I played over 100 games of football. I said, you don't fluke that. I played over 100 games. I knew how to be a professional footballer, and I knew what to do on every match day. I knew how to focus on my game. I knew how, even having a wife and kids, I knew how to block them out going into the game. And that sounds horrible and heartless and inhumane, but that has to happen. As you're traveling on the coach to the game, you switch your phone off. You're focused on what's going on and the path ahead. And then when the game finishes, don't get too upset if you've lost. Don't get too high if you've won, because the next game's only 3 days away, and you can have a post-mortem for a certain extent about what went wrong and what went right, but also know that you've got the next games there at any second. You're never going to win every game. Something's always going to go wrong.
So I'd love to keep on that just for a second, because the highs and lows and things like this. And how do you feel that you were able, what are some of the things that you would do to kind of keep that level head and not get too high after a win, not get too low after a loss, and kind of keep that same baseline, I would say?
A lot of it is down to good coaches, and that coaches aren't going to come in after the game, and if you've won 5-0, tell you all how wonderful you are and throw down 5 crates of beer and say, go on, lads, party. You've just won 3 points. You're the best. Not having managers who, when you lost 6-0, will come in and throw teacups at your head or kick football boots at you, a la Ferguson and David Beckham. But also it's in having the coaches that treat the team as a team, and then treat you as individuals as well. I was somebody who could respond to being shouted at. I didn't mind being shouted at. It probably would have been worse for me if somebody had put their arm around me and said, "You played so wonderfully well." I liked coaches picking out what went wrong. Of course, I needed to be told what went right to a certain extent, but make sure you tell me what's gone wrong as well. How do you? That's part of staying on the even keel. It's what's going on around you and your family. And my dad would come to most games, and my dad would always have something to say about what went wrong, which is great, rather than telling me how wonderful I was. And also my own innate ability to not believe, or, maybe people will say it's a bit of a lack of self-belief. At no point did I ever think I was fully grown, fully rounded. No point did I think I was the next Ronaldo. No point did I ever think I was the next Lee Dixon as a right back. I was always trying to grow. So I think that's just an inward mentality. I don't think I needed to do anything per se. I think it was there. And I think it had been learnt from coaches, from down to a junior school when I was 8 years old, and my coaches never getting too excited with me, or Jim Lennox at Hartwick College never telling me I was the best thing, in the world. You take your guides from people who teach you, and that can be down to school professors as well. It can be down to your parents, down to siblings. I think we're sponges, and we take on board little bits of everything from every facet of our life. Of course, I was focused on football.
Do you feel that just from the day-to-day, you're someone who takes motivation from what they can be and what level you can reach?
Certainly when I was as a footballer, I always was, or I thought I was always striving to be the best I could be. Some people may disagree and tell me how I didn't do the best I could do. But certainly as I got, I know we're now moving on a bit, but as I got older, I would, prehab more and work on prevention of injuries more, and staying fitter in the off seasons, and working in the gym not only before training and then after training. As I say, it's just growing as a person, and as an individual as you get older and develop through your career. And maybe I'm making it too simplistic. Maybe I'm making out that it all just fell into place, but I don't feel I needed to work that hard on the mental aspect of it. I felt that was there. I felt I'd learned that from people around me. As much as it may be ingrained, I was certainly picked up bits of that, that mental strength from other people as well. And watching, when I was 21, 22, watching good professionals around me, seeing how they acted, seeing how they responded to defeat, seeing how they responded to being sent off, see how they responded to the manager shouting at them. It's like growing up as a child. You learn from what's going on around you, your environment. And if you're put into a bad environment as a child, it's very hard to escape it. So I was lucky that I always had a good footballing environment, and I always learned from it. I never really needed to escape it because I never had a bad one. I would move from club to club, but there'd always be good environments, I felt at the time.
Right. And then you made a big move to Millwall in 2000. How was that as a move for you? And then in terms of, at that point, you are a seasoned professional. You've played over 100 games. How was that move for you?
It was wonderful. I was taking my stepdaughter to swimming lessons at the local leisure centre, and Laurie Sanchez, who was my then manager of Wycombe, phoned me up and said, "We've had a bid of whatever it was, 250,000 from Millwall for you. I don't want to accept it, but the chairman was on the phone at the time of the bid coming in from Millwall. He was on the phone to Barclays Bank, and Barclays Bank said, you're 200,000 in arrears." And as he was told that, he literally picked up the other line and somebody offered him more than that. And so the move happened from that, in that financial sense. It was great for me. I don't think Laurie wanted me to go. I know he didn't. I've spoken to him since. I know he didn't want me to. for me and my career, it was a big uphill move, again, financially. And again, I got to go and play and work with some really wonderful individuals. You know, at Millwall, I played with Tim Cahill, who's gone on and played in 3 World Cups or 4 World Cups. Lucas Neal, who played in the Premier League. Stephen Reid, who played in World Cups, I think, certainly played for Republic of Ireland, played for Blackburn. Paul Eiffel, who, you know, played for Barbados and played in the Premier League. I could go on and on. Sean Dyche was my centre-half partner, who's now been manager of Burnley.
Wow.
You know,
Yeah.
I was surrounded by wonderful people. And one of the best bits about my move to Millwall, even before I started playing now, the first day I went to Millwall to sign the contract, I was told by the scout more things about me, my family, and my upbringing than I knew about myself. The background work that they had done on me as a human, more than me as a footballer, and what they knew about me meant that I knew I was wanted. I knew they were a good football club because they'd done their due diligence on me. And I knew that if they did that on me, they'd done it on everybody. I knew that they wanted good people within the dressing room more than they wanted good footballers. Because if you get good people in the dressing room, you can develop them into good footballers. Good footballers who are bad human beings, it's very hard for them to develop into good human beings. Mm-hmm. Or maybe not good human, but bad people within the dressing room. Look at Mario Balotelli. He's got all the skill in the world. You wouldn't want him anywhere near your kids' under-9s team if he was eligible, let alone anything else. He's just a bad individual. I'm sure he's a lovely person, but he's just a bad individual to have in the dressing room. I knew that I was told before I'd even signed my contract. I knew that I was walking into a good place, and mm-hmm. that helped me massively.
Mm-hmm. So then can you touch on some of those levels of success that you had personally as, I think, player of the year, and then your team also enjoyed a nice promotion campaign in 2000-2001. So can you go into some of the things that you enjoyed personally, and then I guess some of the reasons why you think your team were so successful, in addition to what you said about having the good characters in the dressing room?
Yeah, so I went there at the February of 2000, I think. So there's 4 months left of the season. We were in the playoff positions. Quite before, just, you know, when I was on the phone to Laurie Sanchez said to me, and he's the Wycombe manager, so he's saying that about rivals of Mill. He said, I hope you guys don't get promoted this year because you're not quite good enough. But you guys will get promoted next year if you don't get promoted this year, because Millwall are a great club and they've got some really, really good young players there. And he was as good as his word. I think we got knocked out in the playoffs. I think, if my memory serves me right, or we just missed out on the playoffs, so we didn't get promoted. And the next season, we were all a little bit more mature. We were all a little bit better, and we got promoted. And that promotion season, I was lucky enough to win Player of the Year. The top goal scorer of the team, and my roommate at the time, Neil Harris, has never forgiven me for that as a right back, winning Player of the Year. He was
as a goal scorer would, yeah.
Top goal scorer. I think he was top goal scorer in the league. A wonderful guy, went back and managed Millwall relatively recently as well. We're still in contact, but he's never forgiven me for that. But it was nice to have those plaudits individually. Much better than that was we got promoted. So financially, it's good for you. As a team, it's great for you. I think Neil, and possibly Tim Cahill got in the league team of the year. So all the professional players of the league all vote for their best players of a goalkeeper, right back. So you have a starting 11 at the end of the year, voted for by your peers, of who is the best team in the who are the best players in the league. And I was lucky enough to be in that as well. And I think that is one of the things that I cherish, being recognised by your peers. People that you play against every week recognise that you're good. It's not just fans who may only watch you every now and again, or fans who have more ability to vote for you. This is voted for by your peers. So that meant a lot. And that promotion season, I really do think we knew from the beginning of the season that we would get promoted, because we were that good, and there was that much self-belief and that much that much quality in the dressing room. As I say, I reeled off many players, and it's not just the quality of the players, it's the background that the club did on all the players. I honestly couldn't tell you one bad person, or not even bad person, one bad individual in a footballing sense within that dressing room that made life tough for any of us. We were in it together. We went out together, you know, we'd go bowling together, go go-karting together. Yes, we'd have a night out together. You know, we would fight on the field together, you know, metaphorically and not metaphorically. We would fight in the tunnel against the opposition, together, you know, all that. And again, not quite fisticuffs, but certainly arguments and, you know, verbal disagreements. It was a dressing room that played together and stayed together. And that, for me, showed me, if I was ever going to go into coaching or management, which I'm not, I would take that team and go through not just the starting 11, but go through the 20 people within the dressing room at the training grounds, and take little bits from every player, their personalities on the field, off the field, and also that due diligence that the scouting network had done at Millwall. I know I'm sure it's done a lot more now, because you have a lot more ability to check me out, you know, online and stuff like that. But the stuff they did in 2021 years ago, you know, was a little bit ahead of their time, I think. And you know, just as much as the players and the fans and the coaching staff deserve credit, like the scouting network behind deserve a massive of credit for that. You know, ability to construct a tight-knit dressing room. Forget the ability. I really do believe that it's the tight-knit dressing room more than the quality. The quality is great, but the fact that we were all very, very friendly and all good people really helped.
Now, we can't mention the success at Millwall without mentioning the FA Cup run and final, ultimately in 2004. I mean, a crazy and amazing story. We'd love to hear you go into detail about this whole run, if possible.
Yeah, it all fell into place. We were, again, luck plays a big part in things. We didn't play a Premier League team until we played Manchester United in the final, and you know, we saw what happened there. But that's getting a bit ahead of myself. Any cup run, you know, we were lucky because we were a championship team, so you join in the third round. You miss out the first and second rounds. You miss out all the qualifying rounds because you've got to that certain level. So I can't even remember. I think we played possibly Walsall in the third round. That's great. So, but that early on, it's just nice to have a cup run. You know, the league season's going well, so the cup run, it's nice to have a little bit of a release from, you know, the day-to-day grind almost of the league. And obviously, the further along you go, you start thinking, wow, we're only 2 games away from the quarterfinals, or 4 games away from the final. I think we played Burnley in one of the rounds. That went well. And then we played a non-league team. It was Telford, I think we played. Whether that was the 4th round or whether that was the 5th round, I can't quite remember. But it was a dreadful winter in England, and we kept going back and forth to Telford. I think the game was postponed about 4 times. We'd get down to Telford, it would rain, the pitch would be waterlogged. It wasn't a great pitch because it was a non-league team, and that really, really dragged. But again, I think that showed like the mental ability of the team to stay within the moment, of being able to deal with keeping on going down, having multiple games called off. And I think that type of that mentality really helped as well. Helped with the cup run too, and helped with us being successful. So got through that as well, and it then starts getting interesting. And you get to the quarter-final stages, and then things start getting interesting because you see which teams are left, and with any cup run, it's about who you draw in the league and who you draw in the cup. And I don't know whether everybody knows, but the cup draw is we still have we did at the time, had an old fangled way of doing it. So all the balls would go into a velvet bag and they'd be drawn out and they'd be live on air, and you'd probably have Alan Shearer drawing the home teams and Gary Lineker drawing the away teams. And we were fortunate that we drew Tranmere Rovers in the quarterfinals, who aren't a great team, but that all of a sudden you become the team that is the favourite. All of a sudden everything turns around. You're now the favourite in the quarter-final, and that brings a completely different pressure, obviously. Now the expectancy is that you win, whereas previously maybe it's not, and you're like, oh wow, now you're playing against a team, we better not slip up. And I think at the Den, we played them at the Den and we drew. And then we had to go away to Prenton Park, which, if anybody knows Prenton Park up around Liverpool, not the nicest place to go. The pitch is dreadful.
I saw videos of that, and I think there was a missed penalty in the at the end of the first. The replay, the field looked.
It's dreadful.
Quite interesting.
Did Kevin Muscat miss the penalty in the?
I think so. Yeah, I was watching some highlights in preparation, and there was a whole lead up on this, and they missed one.
I think Kevin was the captain, and he missed the penalty, and so that means we have to go to Prenton Park, which is, as you saw, not a nice place to go. But again, our team had that ability to deal with adversity, travelling from London up to Liverpool, playing on a quagmire of a pitch, as you saw. Before, we now play on pitches that are semi-acrylic, the plastic is woven into the grass. I think most pitches are 65% grass, 35% plastic nowadays. I'm sure plastic's not the technical term, but it is. We went up there and got a result. I think it was 2-1. I think in the replay up at Prenton Park. And so then you're in the semi-finals, and there's us and Sunderland, two championship teams, and Man United and Arsenal as Premier League teams. So,
great draw.
So a great draw. We are very, very cynical, being cynical human beings, that we thought that as those balls go into the bag and they're twirled around, that the sponsors would make sure that Man United draw one of the championship teams and Arsenal would draw one of the championship teams, so that Man United can play Arsenal in the FA Cup finals. I'm sure many
thought the same.
Exactly. And obviously that didn't happen. And we played Sunderland, and the semi-finals is at a neutral ground, so nobody's got the advantage. So we go off to Old Trafford to play Sunderland. So the biggest ground in the country in terms of capacity crowd, apart from Wembley. So we're off there, and we played a very good game. Sunderland were probably the better team. Sunderland had more possession. Sunderland had more chances, but we defended better. Very lucky that we had Tim Cahill playing for us, so he scored for us. Mm-hmm. And I'll always remember him running the length of Old Trafford, twirling his shirt above his head, to go from the far goal up to the other goal, which is just to the side of our goal, which is where our fans were. So, or the majority of our fans were. So we played that game and we won. And it was, at first it's a remarkable experience playing at Old Trafford, but to play in a game where there's that much pressure that you know that you'll get into the FA Cup final, if you win, I've never felt anything like it. The adrenaline rush before the game, during the game, the nervous energy, obviously, before the game, and then the adrenaline still being with you for the whole of the evening after that Old Trafford game. We obviously, and nobody would deny us the opportunity to party. We went back to our hotel and partied the night away, and it was a great 24 hours, that's for certain.
And then how was that the cup final game? I know we know the result wasn't the best, but
the cup final was tough because during the cup run, during the league season, we'd picked up a number of injuries. Kevin Muscat, our captain, broke his leg and I think dislocated his kneecap in the semi-final at Old Trafford. So you never like seeing friends and teammates getting hurt. So he got hurt. I think the majority of our centre forwards were suspended or hurt. We really had a complete and utter makeshift side in that final. So not only are you playing the best team in Europe at the time in Man United, it's a half a Millwall reserve side. And with all due respect to that Millwall team and however much togetherness we had, when, you're down to the bare bones, and we really were, I don't want to say that we went into that game knowing we would lose, but it became very, very difficult because we didn't have our team. It wasn't our team. I was fortunate because I got to be the captain because Kevin got injured. Wonderful for me. I would give everything I could for Kevin to have been the captain, for him to play, for us to have had a full team and had a real shot. We would have had a real shot with the team we had if it was the full team and we had everybody out there. Dennis Wise, our player manager, had about 10 cortisone injections in his calf going into the game. Just everything was against us. So the day was wonderful. The experience was wonderful. We played against Ronaldo and Roy Keane, and I got to walk out alongside Alex Ferguson, Sir Alex Ferguson, and Roy Keane, and Ronaldo, and Giggs, and Scholes, and Van Nistelrooy. Of course, it's amazing, but I don't want to say it wasn't a bad experience, obviously, but I just wish we could have experienced it as a full Millwall team and probably given the fans a bit more than we did, just because of that, the inability to field our full team. So everything was wonderful. I know I'm painting a bad light of it. It was a great experience and one I will have with me for the rest of my life. But there was definitely things that were against us in that game. And obviously, you're playing Man United. It wasn't a surprise we lost. If we'd have gone into half-time at 0-0, it would have been a lot better. We went in at half-time 1-0 down after conceding in the 43rd minute or the 44th minute. Things didn't fit into place for that final, which was unfortunate. But look, not many teams play in the FA Cup final. Not many people in the world have walked their team out, in the FA Cup final, and I got to do both of those things. So I don't have any regrets per se, but I wish more of my teammates had had that ability to be playing because they were suspended or injured or whatever the case may have been.
Right.
Yeah. So before we don't want to run out of time here, so we want to hit you with some, not quick fire, but a little quicker questions where we kind of get a whole package of the career. So we're going to start off with best player you played with and best player you played against.
Best player I played with was Chris Coleman. Chris Coleman, the Fulham left-sided centre half, played for Wales, played for Fulham, and it was everything about him: his leadership, his strength, his ability in the dressing room, on the pitch. So I am treating that as an all-rounded thing. There may have been other better players. I played with Ray Wilkins at Wycombe, who played 85 games for England. I played with Dennis Wise. I played with some fantastic players, but as an all-rounded individual and player, Chris Coleman was the best. I played with, best I played against. I played against Ronaldo, but I didn't play against him per se because he was on the other side of the pitch. David Ginola is the best player I have played against, up against. I have marked the Tottenham left winger. And in an FA Cup game at White Hart Lane, I played against David Ginola, and the ability he has, and 6'3", he's massive. I didn't realise how big he was, but almost a fleet-footed winger. To be that good was pretty frightening. So Ginola's the best player I played against.
What about your proudest moment as a footballer?
Proudest moment, and this is I've got three, and I'm not going to deviate from that. So I'm sorry, I've got three. My proudest moments were escaping relegation with Wycombe on the last day of the season, escaping relegation with Crystal Palace on the last day of the season, and then winning the FA Cup final, winning the semi-final with Millwall, and just all for different reasons. But the adrenaline buzz from all three of those was amazing. To escape relegation with 8 minutes to play away at Lincoln with Wycombe Wanderers, it may not feel like the most romantic of things. When you've played 45 games of a season, to go into it knowing that you need to win to survive after all that's gone before you. So basically you're playing a season that's one game long, and the adrenaline sort of coursing through, everybody and coursing through your veins is amazing. So then to go 45 games and 82 minutes into the season. So now you're playing an 8 minute long season basically, because it's 0-0 with 8 minutes to go. To then score, to know that you are safe if you keep a clean sheet. It's 1-0. Lincoln are already relegated. We're staying up if we stay at 1-0. Lincoln don't give a shit about anything. They put 5 people up front for the last 8 minutes and just start pumping the ball into the box. And we were obviously, the old cliche, we're under the cosh for the last 8 minutes, the last 7 minutes. But then for that, that final whistle, the sheer relief, I sincerely remember going into the dressing room and just sitting down, like in the corner. Everybody else was celebrating and popping champagne corks. You probably shouldn't be popping champagne corks, but it feels like you've won the league to have stayed in the league. I just sat there for 20 minutes. So I wasn't numb, but I was just so incredibly worn out, like mentally and physically worn out. And it took a long while for me really to sort of come round from that in the dressing room. Obviously I did, but it felt great once I really realised what happened. And I had a very similar experience with Crystal Palace as well. On the last day of the season, we had to go up to Sheffield Wednesday, play at their ground, away at Hillsborough, which is a massive ground in front of 35,000 of their fans, maybe 1,000 of our fans, and I think we needed a draw to stay up, to send Sheffield Wednesday down. So it was, we've been through 46 games of the season. It was a season where we had been in contention for promotion, but our club went into administration. So if you go into administration as a football club, you get minus 10 points. So all of a sudden we got moved from the playoffs to the relegation zone. And the highs and lows of that season to again come down to one 90-minute game was phenomenal. And again, you should never really celebrate, the worst kind of success, but it felt like that. And again, a lot of it was taken out of our hands. So we went up there and we drew, and we celebrated on the pitch. Then 20,000 Sheffield Wednesday fans came on the pitch, and we were then forced to run off the pitch. And I remember the last man of our starting lineup, poor old Clint Hill. I was playing right back or right centre half. So I was quite near the dugout and the tunnel. So the minute I heard the whistle, I sprinted off, knowing what was coming. And Hill was playing left back, so he was right over the far side. So he had the width of the pitch he didn't quite make it, and he came back into the dressing room, and I will never forget it. In a pair of tighty whities, one boot, one sock, and completely naked with like red marks, welts over his body. He said he'd had to physically fight his way off the dressing room. He'd lost his shirt, lost his shorts, lost a boot and a sock in the process, made his way back to the dressing room. And I've never seen anybody not only elated to have made it, but just pure elation on his face. Firstly, because he'd fought off a number of Sheffield Wednesday fans, but also because he'd made it back to, the sanctuary of the dressing room and, all his mates and his teammates. And that one I could celebrate. That one I really, I lived the moment and lived it. And I remember I jumped in a car with 3 of my teammates and his parents. We didn't go on the team coach for whatever reason. We wanted to get back to London as quickly as possible. We had a 6-pack in the car, driving down the M1 motorway, driving south towards London. We stopped off at a motorway service station, like a gas station, and we piled out there to use the bathroom. And we got 2 or 3 other of the supporters coaches just happened to be there, Palace supporters coaches. So we got there's pictures online. We got absolutely mobbed in the bathroom of the service station. Not in the manner that George Michael would get mobbed in bathrooms in service stations, in a totally different manner. But we made it off the pitch, out of the bathroom, just surrounded by a bunch of everybody, all the fans jumping up and down. And again, it was great to see, the real people, fans, what it meant to them for us to have survived on that day. And it felt fantastic to experience that with the fans. It really did. We then, made it back to the car, got all the way back to London, and we went out and, partied in the sort of local neighbourhood, and again with the fans. And I guess that was the beauty of the time that I was playing football. There weren't, or people weren't so willing to take mobile phone pictures of you. People weren't so willing to sell a story for money. And if I had too many drinks, they weren't willing to sell stories to the Sun, and things like that. It was a time, I don't want to say it, I don't want to sound like an old man there, but it was a time when it felt good to be celebrating with people and feel safe with the fans without, having to worry about what was going to happen the next morning. If one of us stumbled over accidentally or because we'd had too much to drink, and you'd have people taking pictures and making you look a fool the next day. So that was my second. And then, as I say, the third one is obviously winning that semi-final against Sunderland. Firstly, it was at Old Trafford, such a monumental stadium, iconic stadium. Everybody everywhere around the world, certainly with soccer knowledge, knows Old Trafford. So for it to be there, for us to have made the FA Cup final, and again, the celebrations with fans and with just a really good bunch of people. So I know that's a very long-winded answer to the question, and I'm sure you only wanted one answer, but honestly,
no.
Those 3 different games and different days at different phases of my life, at different phases of my career, really stand out now, even, a long time later, a player who's suffered, numerous concussions and headed way too many footballs, but the distinct memory of those 3 days will stay with me until I can't remember them anymore. But it will be a long time, sure, long time coming, that's for sure.
Now, before we get into our wrap-up question, I read a bit about a few nicknames that you have or had from fans, and I just want to know if you have a favorite one.
Certainly at Millwall, I was Shaggy, and I've just always been Shaggy from obviously the Scooby-Doo character, and the fact that I'll say, but back then my hair was a lot blonder. I bleached it a lot more. Except it didn't fall. It wasn't falling out as it is now. So Shaggy, exactly, a big long sort of almost blonde hair. So Shaggy is my favourite, and just I was at Millwall for 6 years, and I have an affinity to all the clubs I was at, obviously, and an affinity to the fans at all the clubs. But it was just the longevity of my time at Millwall. I was there for 6 years, so I got to know many of the fans, personally, and are still friends now. And I got to know the area as well. Anybody who knows Millwall and South Bermondsey and Bermondsey as a whole, I got to understand what Millwall Football Club was as a whole, not just on the field, but around it, the community around it. It has a really bad press, and sometimes rightly so, because sometimes there's a percentage of the fans who bring the club into disrepute, but it's a very minor number. And back home, the press like to vilify Millwall Football Club. There's not enough gets written about the community spirit around Millwall. Not enough gets written about the good work so many fans do for charity and the club does for charity as a whole. So the nickname that they gave me, I kind of cherish it. And still, when I go back home now, people will be on the train when I'm around London and shout the nickname out. And it's nice, and it's nice that the fans. I think they realised that I gave my all for Millwall until it finished, as everything finishes at a certain point. But I think they know that I hold the club pretty dear, as I say, as I do every club. I'm not being disparaging to any of them, but Millwall has that affinity because of the cup run, because we played in Europe, because we went through some really good times, and I think the fans realised what a good thing they had during that. Probably 2000, maybe even 1998 before my time, up until about 2004, 2005. It was a good time in the club's history.
So here at Footwork, we kind of have this motto that's make your own path. It's kind of how it sounds, essentially, kind of going against the grain, maybe, or not following the social norm just to reach your goal, do what's best for you and your ambitions rather than, relying on comfort and what society says. So, I mean, do you find any relation in that quote? And do you feel like you truly made your own path?
I think so. I certainly made my own path. I think we all make our own path to a certain extent, of course. I think I'm also very lucky in being who I am, in what colour I am, what gender I am. Who my parents were. I think my path was made very much easier because of all of those things. I don't think I faced the adversity that lots of people around the world face. I've got a good bunch of friends as well. I think it's like a Bill Hicks quote. It's something like, it just takes the right friend, the right woman, and the right bar, and any of us can end up like a bum, And I mean that I mean that almost in a literal sense, and almost as a metaphor as well. I could have been born anywhere. I didn't choose to be born where I was. I don't get to choose who my parents are, who my friends are, not all the time. I'm very aware of my good fortune as well. And I know that's getting a bit off topic, but I'm incredibly aware that my path has been made much easier for me. But within that path, of course, I've faced adversity. I guess just not the adversity that lots of other people face. So I'm very, very thankful that my path that I constructed was made much easier because of who I am, and that's something that's out of my control, but it doesn't stop me looking at other people around the world and thinking, that not everybody would even have the ability to make my own path. And I think that's something that I think about every day. And I think about, how lucky I am, and other people aren't so lucky. But what I have done, that doesn't take away from what I've done. That doesn't take away from how hard I worked at school, even to pass my exams, how hard I worked to learn to be able to read, write, and learn my times table and things like that. And it also doesn't stop me realizing that, I'm probably only one mistake away from, or even during my career, one big mistake away from everything going away. You only need to look at, is it Henry Ruggs who just got done for drink driving and got into the car crash and through a fault of his own and ended up taking somebody's life, and his whole life is ruined now from doing that. He'll never forgive himself. I'm sure he'll never play in the NFL again. He'll go into prison. And again, I'm going off on little tangents here, and it's, there's lots of other people around the world more fortunate than us three who get to make mistakes time and time again, and they still carry on their career path. So I'm, within each of our paths and within my path, I'm very aware of all of our differing levels of ability to make our path. And, somebody like me who is fortunate, but I'm still only one mistake away from my career path, whatever it may be, finishing tomorrow. I'm not completely, I'm not as fortunate as some may be. I'm not Prince Andrew. I can't make the mistakes that he did and still carry on with his life, But I'm also much more fortunate than many other people. So I may not have answered that question quite in the manner.
No, it's a refreshing perspective of gratitude, and
I'm fortunate. I am fortunate. We all know what goes, or I wish everybody knew how difficult it was for other people to create their own path. But the path that I have made myself, but it has been made more fortunate because of who I am.
No, it's a great perspective, and couldn't agree more. Now, Matt, where can people find you today before we end? Where can they find you? Are you on social media? Are you doing anything online? And
where can you find me today? I'm at Matty J. Lawrence on Twitter. I think I'm on Instagram, but I don't use Instagram. I'm not on Facebook, and I'm very glad, given the current climate, that I'm not on Facebook, and I've never been lucky on Facebook. I hope that gets disbanded, but I know it won't, but I hope it does. Where else can you find me? Currently, I'm sat in my apartment in Jersey City. I just moved from Jersey City, from Manhattan to Jersey City. So that's where I am now. But I'm working for NYCFC doing the radio broadcasts. So it is at nycfc.com/radio for any commentaries you want to listen to of NYCFC. Right. I think that's the right one. I am also working on radio shows for Sirius XM-FC, and you will find me on Sirius Channel 157. So that's those little bits of advertising done. That's pretty much it. That's where you'll find me. I'm yet to find a local pub in Jersey City, so I couldn't tell you where you'll find me locally. I've only been here a couple of weeks, so I'm sure I'll soon find a local pub. But you'll also find me, I'll tell you where you'll find me. You'll find me at the GMT Tavern on Bleecker Street, where my friend owns a bar. So I'm there as well. He's just about to reopen after a fire that was through no fault of his own. So he's just reopening up now. So yeah, GMT Tavern on the corner of Bleecker and LaGuardia in Manhattan. That's where you'll find me.
I love that.
There we go.
I might have to, when I'm back in the winter, I may have to meet you there too for a pint.
Yeah, for real.
That's where I'll be.
Amazing. Well, Matt, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure, and we could talk for hours, and hopefully there's a round two sometime.
Yeah, anytime you want. Anytime you want.
Footwork is sponsored by ourselves. Also, Kong Fitness and Merchant Designs, baby. Follow us on Instagram at Footwork_podcast. Twitter is at Footwork Podcast. YouTube and Facebook, just check out Footwork Podcast, search it. Email us if you need anything, any questions at footworkpodcast@gmail.com. And remember, plug, pass. Tell your parents, Amazon delivery guy, mailman, I don't know who, just tell them. Like, subscribe, review, all of it helps. Danke.